Only mode.
Well, we want to welcome you to our broadcast. Thank you for joining. We have folks on from all over the world. I see my good friend Vogue in France. Hello, Vogue. How are you? And Sylvia and Manuel. There's lots of folks on. So thank you for joining the webinar today. We are recording this as well. And I'm actually going to allow Bill Inslee to have the control panel here. Most of you know Bill Inslee, who is he runs the U.S. chapter. I guess your official title, Bill, is you're the CEO or
Secretary General. Secretary General, yes.
Yes. So Bill does a great job for us. He's a good friend, and he's been very involved with the City We Need and with the Quito event. And in Nice, France, we talked about having him come and do the presentation so we could all find out a little bit more about what went on in Quito and some other items. So, Bill, I'm going to let you get started. Thank you so much for joining. I guess I should do a quick test to make sure everyone can hear me okay. And if you could raise your hand or maybe type in the chat box, we'll know that we are broadcasting loud and clear. I'm not seeing any hands yet, but
Yeah, and also, John, I've got a video that's going to start right at the beginning, so you might just stay on to make sure that with the video, if I play on my computer, people will be able to hear it, you think?
Yes. So if everyone can hear us okay, if you could just maybe give us a little virtual hand wave or a question. Thank you, Vogue. I see. So Vogue must be able to hear us. Yes, he can hear. Good. Okay. All right. Well, Bill, go right ahead. And thanks, everyone. Again, we will take questions at the conclusion of the webinar. So go ahead, Bill.
So welcome, everyone, to the webinar and the reports on our participation in the United Nations Habitat 3 in Quito. It was a very, very exciting conference. We had a really great participation, and we're going to go over some of the things that we were able to accomplish there. I have on the screen now, and I think hopefully many of you have heard about the book that we were able to publish on the City We Need. And the City We Need is affordable is the particular aspect that FIAPSI is focusing on. There are a lot of aspects to the City We Need, and the City We Need is affordability, workforce, and affordable housing are the particular focus that we had. This is some on the FIAPSI USA site. If you want to see this, you can see from our programs menu on FIAPSI-USA.com and the United Nations Urban Agenda. This is the book link. You can download a PDF of the book that we premiered in Quito. A few photos are here of our participation in Quito. Lots of great times at Quito, really talking about the next 20 years in urbanization. And so it's very, very exciting. Another thing that you want to look at is if you want to look here on the same web page, you will be able to download the new urban agenda, the document that was adopted in Quito, and actually the General Assembly in December adopted this new urban agenda. And so here there is the explainer document, which basically gives you an idea of how this document came about, what it's about, all of the things that are available. And then if you look down here, you will be able to download the full urban agenda in the various languages that have been approved. So very, very exciting. One of the key things that we talked about, and Jean-Claude, who was head of this, talked about the first two, 76, 96, the conferences happened, a great document was presented, but basically there was very little implementation. And so FIAPSI and all of the people who participated in creating these documents pledged to actually implement this agenda, to not just have a lovely document, but to actually implement this new urban agenda. So we will be talking about this throughout this year and the coming years, particularly in MIPIM. If those of you who are hopefully will join us in MIPIM, we'll be talking about that. And so you saw the idea, the video that I saw was created by the UN Habitat to really talk about and introducing the concepts of the new urban agenda. And key of the image here is that it has image of hands. And so everyone has hands. And that is the idea, that the implementation is really about us. Each of us, in our own capacity, in our own countries, implementing the new urban agenda. And so what I'm going to go through today are the 10 points and 10 fingers of the new urban agenda that we're really looking at in FIAPSI, and kind of share with you some of the ideas that were presented in the book, some ideas that we are looking at. And what we'll do is I will start with the end, which is the end is FIAPSI is now launching the FIAPSI Urban Lab. And the FIAPSI Urban Lab is a place for us to continue to showcase innovative ideas for urbanization, affordable housing, workforce housing, all of the ideas of our cities, and how real estate people can engage across the spectrum and make our cities sustainable. And I did want to, every time that I talk about this, I think we need to make everyone aware that a lot of times when we say sustainable cities, people think environmental. They think, oh, they mean green cities and environmental. And absolutely that's one of the aspects, but there are 4 aspects to a sustainable city. There's social sustainability, economic sustainability, political sustainability, and ecological sustainability. So I think one of the things that we want you to take away from today's webinar is that sustainability is broader than just ecology. It's broader than just green buildings. So starting with the first point, socially inclusive and engaging. And that really, I think, the idea of inclusive and inclusion is really, you're going to see that throughout these days and throughout this presentation, is that we have to be inclusive of all of the people in our cities. If we're not inclusive, if we're not engaging every group in our cities, then we're not going to be sustainable. And in the book, actually, there was one presentation from Hungary. And this is a city in Hungary who really went in and said, we need to really revitalize our city. And the idea of making it a better place. And so one of the things, the socially inclusive and engaging, was they realized if they didn't have schools in the environment for their young people, the young people would go away. So what was happening in this city was, in addition to the deterioration of the physical plant, the real estate, there were no opportunities for the young people. So as soon as the young people were old enough, they left the city. They'd go away to school and they would never come back. So the city realized that in order for their city to be sustainable, they had to attract the young people and get the young people to stay. So this may be a little hard to see, but I'll read it. You know, as a result, and in the book, the key highlights are highlighted there. It says, as a result of the successful urban revitalization, young people are no longer leaving the area, and the number of crimes committed in the area has been steadily declining. So it was the idea of making sure that there are opportunities that go along with the revitalization. revitalization of that city. So it was a very, very exciting submission. This was submitted by FIAPSI Hungary. I don't know if soccer players, but you may know the soccer team. That was one of the things they were famous for, but we also want to broadcast and promote that they're also famous for really revitalizing their city and bringing the young people in. So next, number two, finger two, peace everyone, is affordable, accessible, and equitable. And of course, this is where we are really concentrating our efforts on, the idea of affordable housing. I have now been, John asked me to do this because I did a presentation at the NAR conference in Orlando, and I also did it for the FIAPSI USA Principal Member Council of Residential Specialists. And the idea, you know, every time in every room I ever go to and I ask, you know, people please raise your hand if there's an affordability problem for the housing in your city. And everybody always answers yes. There's definitely an affordable housing issue. And so the idea, I say then, is, well, how did it get that way? Who made it unaffordable? And, you know, a lot of times people will say, oh, well, you know, there are certain laws or there are certain zoning orders, you know, and there are lots of reasons how it got that way. But the next question is, did real estate people have anything to do with creating the situation? Well, the answer has to be yes. Because if we aren't a part of, you know, we have to acknowledge that we have some accountability here in what happens to the market. And this is not to look backwards and place blame. This is to look forward and say, what are we going to do about it? It's not going to solve itself by the real estate community not engaging. And so that's really what this is about acknowledging where we are and then saying, what are we going to do to go forward? I think many people are aware of the Global Housing Foundation in partnership with UN Habitat. This is Renee Franks originated this, and it's been a long part of FIAPSI, and the idea of actually building houses that meet the market for the working poor. So the idea is many of these people, that there are programs out there, Habitat for Humanity, which is kind of give away or build a house for the community and donate it, but these are actually micro mortgages and people coming together to actually create housing that is of a scale that the working poor can afford. They have an income, but they cannot afford many of the market rate houses that are there. So you see here pictures of Frank and Sharon Young, Catherine Shahini. This was in Panama. Hopefully some of you may have been able to go to Panama and see some of these projects, see the video that was at the World Congress. But you see here, and the Grupo Shahini is one of the developers that has been looking at developing these projects. So you see they're very small houses on a plot of land that people can afford. And you can see if you download the book, basically looking at a typical affordable home in the program sells for $50,000. There's standard blueprints, and then there are subsidized mortgages. So depending on your income, for instance, people who make less than $40,000 a year are qualified for interest-free loans. And then above $40,000, they get a discounted rate from the market rate. But this is, again, is the market participating in the creation. So this is a part of a much larger development where on the other side, and part of this development, there are actually market rate houses. So this is just a subsection of an entire development that has market rate housing. And so those are the kinds of things, is mixed developments, bringing communities together that include, again, back to inclusive, that people are included of all income levels and types. The other, number three, and as I said in the beginning, economically vibrant and inclusive. So the economic viability of a city. Well, what is it? Is it growing? Is it inclusive? How are the economic viability of that city incorporated into the plans of the city? Because that sustainable economic model really is crucial. And certainly we have cities that go through cycles. What are the main industries? Do the industries, if things happen, interestingly, in the U.S., we have Detroit and an interesting thing happening there. Certainly, I just saw in the news last night that London with Brexit, has a whole group of people who are moving jobs outside. So there's always an economic aspect to whether the city is sustainable and really diverse and inclusive of all types of economic activity. The key here, which you learn, is if you're completely dependent on one industry, then there become issues. And so again, staying with Panama for this project that was submitted by the Ministry of Housing in Panama, again, I don't know, I know a few people were able to go to Colón, which is the urban renovation of this city. And so you can see here in the picture, the old picture, those of you who were able to go to the historic part of Panama saw that kind of activity that's going on now, is that there has to be an economic vibrancy that goes hand in hand with actually the creation of housing. So the Ministry of Housing has 3 different projects that focus specifically on affordable housing and residential projects near the metro, near the airport, anticipating. So that's the idea, is that as they are finishing the new airport, they're anticipating that there will be people working there, ancillary businesses that are out there, and so they're already building housing to house those people so they don't have to drive in or take the train, etc. So the idea, and this is really the idea of, and we talk about this, the real estate industry participating in the economic development. Certainly, I think everybody is quite aware that real estate is one of the fundamental drivers of economic growth and development, and how the market is doing. We're constantly looking at that. And so these are not really new things, but it's kind of a call to action, is for each of us as real estate professionals in our communities to be involved with the economic development boards, to be involved and understand what's going on, where are the new developments, where is the new economic empowerment zone that's being created, because there are opportunities there for us to proactively be involved in that and then gain business by being a part of that. Number 4 is collectively managed and democratically governed, and that is basically what we're talking about, is that we need to be participatory in our zoning boards, in our political processes that are part of the economic development. So if we don't have a seat at the table, then whatever happens, it's much more difficult for us to react to it than to be a part of that actual plan. And so that comes to the public-private partnerships, which I think everybody is well aware of, this long tradition of the government can't solve these problems alone. The private industry can't solve these problems alone. The financiers can't solve these problems alone. It really has to be everyone coming to the table, cooperating, and finding ways that we can really address these issues, with the understanding that without addressing these issues, we're going to continue to have difficulty, and there's going to be an economic drain. So again, looking at this is one of the sections in the book. Again, please download the book. These are the Gabriela apartments in San Francisco. I think if you're from the U.S., you know that low-income housing tax credits are the key funder for housing, affordable housing and workforce housing in the U.S. And this is the U.S. Internal Revenue Service that basically, for those people with high incomes that have high taxes because they make large amounts of profits from whatever their business operations are or their investments, they can get a tax credit, a discount on the amount of taxes they pay that goes then toward the funding of the development of affordable housing. And this, by the way, was a rehabilitation of an existing project here. If you can't read on the screen, they were able to get 3.28 million in funds to build this building, to rehab this building, and put 29 units for families there. So the idea that the cooperation of the taxing authorities with the developers, they were able to create this. And I believe today this is still the number one way that affordable housing is funded in the U.S. But it's the idea of incentives, working with the government, coming together. Another one is in Luxembourg. This was submitted by FIAPSI Luxembourg. And this is long-term leasing of land. So I think if you look at it, you've got to go back to the rising costs of land, and that, of course, then makes the rising costs of housing. You know, that first step is, what is the land? So here in Luxembourg, this is their project, which they have been doing now. I think they're in the third or fourth different round, beginning in 2006, and I think every 2 or 3 years they have a round where they make land available to the developers on a 99-year lease. So it's city-owned land, they own the land, and they lease it at a reasonable lease fee to the developer so that they can build the affordable housing, particularly for young families and people that are just above the income of social housing. And I think it's important for us to make a clear distinction here that we're talking about market housing, not social housing. In other words, not fully subsidized housing. Many countries have fully subsidized housing programs or social housing programs where they provide the housing for free or very, 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 very minimal costs. This is the idea that what happens is there is a huge gap between, you know, no income or very low income people and families, and then even what is the lowest entry point of many, many places. You know, many places, you know, the lowest in the U.S. you can have, you know, $250,000, $300,000 as the very, very lowest entry point. And there are lots of people who just can't afford that even lowest entry point. So how do we address that issue and come up with solutions? And so public-private partnerships are one way to look at that, where the government works to lease the land at either no cost or low costs, and then the developer then is able to lower that initial going-in cost as far as the land cost goes. So that idea again of working with everyone. Next is urban planning and vision, and I want to really talk about, when we were in Quito, it was really one of the most amazing things that we look at is that there was information presented by UN Habitat about how many cities have a long-range plan, a grand vision for that city. And I was really struck by the data that they have, where they showed since 1976, where when the first Habitat was held, since that time, the number of cities that have a long-term plan and vision for the development of that country has fallen by over 20%. So the number of cities who actually have an urban plan, a long-term big plan, make no small plans, has fallen by 20 to 30%. And at the same time, informal settlements have grown by 20 to 30% or more in some places. So it's not rocket science, it's very clear. If you don't have a plan, then informality grows. That's just the result. And it was eye-opening for me because I work a lot with informality in real estate markets, and the idea of what's going to happen. And so this led me to my plan of Chicago, and I'm in Chicago, and we all are proud of our cities, and I'm going to talk about that. That's one of the things. But the Burnham Plan was developed in 1909. in 1909, and one of the things I talk about and you look at is in the late 1870s, Chicago had 300,000 people. By 1909, it had 3 million people. So Chicago grew at such an incredible pace that the people, the urban planners at that time, the city at that time realized we have to have a plan here. If we're going to grow this way, we need to have a plan. And if you're not familiar with the Burnham Plan, it's really a great plan. The key is the city of Chicago is still following this plan today. Bold plan, big dreams. Make no small plans. So Daniel Burnham, if you want to research him, the idea is, are we planning our cities for the next 100 years? Because that's what's really required. It's not that we're going to do that plan, but the idea is to have that vision. What is my city going to look like 100 years from now? And so that is really exciting. I'm very proud to look down the boulevards in Chicago, to see the open lakefront, and know that that plan makes Chicago one of the great cities in the world. For architecture, for cleanliness, for the ability for people to get in and out. But that started more than 100 years ago. So what is our plan? What is the plan for your city for the next 100 years? So we have to think that big. That's the idea that we look at, is urban planning and vision. I say if you have children and you want them to be rich in the future, tell them to go to school for urban planning. Urban planning there are of course lots of urban planners out there now, but urban planning is one of those areas where I believe there will be a great deal of opportunity in the future. I think the city we need, the idea is that urbanization is driven by cities and mayors. And so certainly there are national policies and regional policies and all of those kinds of things, but the real action is happening in cities. So that's really what we are looking at as far as how to move forward and having a plan. So we have 5 fingers, 1 good hand ready. The idea of how to really start to create our cities, have the multiple inclusion. Again, going back to inclusion, the real estate industry cannot function in a silo by itself. It has to be involved in how we move forward with various aspects of sustainability. Remembering again that sustainability includes economic viability, social inclusion, political involvement, and environmental or ecological inclusion or ideas. So now moving on to the second hand, point number 6, regenerative and resilient. And I think that is one of the things that we look at. And this idea of regenerating, reusing, recycling. And one of the projects that is in the book was from Builders of Hope. And radical recycling, it's called. What happens now, particularly in many of the places that are growing, is as the land price goes up and the land values go up, the size of the house that's on that land is not large enough. So in many, many places, what happens? The house is torn down and put into a landfill. It creates not only this perfectly usable house in many, many cases, but then it creates an ecological situation of actually having this as waste. I think that you can quite clearly do research about what the carbon footprint and the costs of construction are. Many, many countries do a much better job than the United States does of reusing buildings. You saw in Hungary. We have a terrible tendency here to tear everything down, put it in a landfill, and build something new. Well, one of the innovative solutions is, wait a minute, what about this perfectly good house? The land is sold, rather than tear that house down, move that house to a different lot. And so Builders of Hope has been able to do this. This project is in North Carolina. They are also able to do this in the Detroit area. Any area where maybe, again, going back, the economic viability has moved. There are all these houses. You can see in the lower corner there, you see how the houses were moved. They were basically dismantled or taken apart in ways that they were usable, moved to these areas, and then put together in a community so that multiple houses from different areas were gotten together and created a community of, again, perfectly usable houses, small houses, again, but the idea of regeneration, not tearing everything down, but finding ways to reuse that and have that not end up in a landfill. So that's really one of the innovative ideas, rebuild, revitalize, and transform. So let's think about ways that we can reuse materials. I teach at Georgetown in their emerging markets, and I don't know if this I think was shown at one of the World Congresses, but they have a video which they build a hotel in China in 30 days. And I should have prepared to show this. It's a really interesting video. Of course, it's manufactured, so each of the pieces, it's like what do you call that? Legos or erector set. So they're able to take this building, build all the hotel, a 30-story hotel. Each of the pieces is manufactured, brought to the site, put together, and they make a 30-story hotel in 30 days. The environmental savings, the windows that change, the recapturing of the water, all that is built into the design. And the key is, if they needed to, they could actually disassemble it and move it someplace else. So it's kind of a radical idea, and we tend to be in this industry pretty conservative, and we kind of do things the way we've always done them. But the world is moving ahead really, really quickly, and so that idea of finding ways to really become innovative with the way we actually do everything, whether it's the cost of land and a lease, whether it's building, whether it's who's involved in the planning. And another big thing, here we are, number 7, shared identity and sense of space. The idea of a city having pride in what our city means. I think Danielle is on the line. She always talks about New York and how proud she is to be from New York. So I'm going to have to do my Chicago, another pitch for Chicago. And that's really the, this is one of the projects that is in Chicago. And I'm talking about this because once everybody has a sense of pride and a sense of place, that tends to make the city, to make them vested in the interest of the city. And so this is just recently, hot off the presses, January 12th. This is the Chicago Housing Authority and our subsidized housing. I think that this Chicago Housing Authority and the story of Chicago housing and the housing projects is very famous around the world and what it's gone through. If any of you don't know, many of the high-rise Chicago Housing Authority's buildings were demolished. They were torn down. And lots of people were displaced because of the rising values. Lathrop Homes in Chicago is one of the oldest of these projects, and the real key is they have not torn it down. It still exists, and now they are redeveloping this project. Again, all this doesn't go into a landfill, but they actually redo this project, and it has been it is sat empty for a very, very long time. One of the projects in the book is about blocks in New York that have sat vacant for a long time because there was no solution. So just wanted to show you a few pictures here. This is the idea of the way it's going to look in the future. They started in 1938 when this project was built. You see, this is the way it looks right now. It is actually on the river, so it has access to recreate. There's the possibility of that kind of thing really looking forward and saying, you know, what can we do? Here is the original plan. This is the section, what it looked like when they originally were planning to do it. And we do have one picture, just wanted to kind of show. Again, here is what we want it to look like. Talking about having a kayak dock so people can get on the river, have access to the river, not be closed off from the river. And just one more picture. Here is the Lathrop homes at the very, very beginning in 1937, and what happened, you know, and that kind of thing. So each city has its own unique character, and one of the things, again, we can get involved. What do we get involved? Each of us, I believe, is proud of our city, our identity, and how unique it is. I've been so excited and continue to be excited about traveling around to the World Congresses. I'm looking very forward to going to Andorra, seeing what that looks like, what identity is there, what does that mean. And so this is a way to get people enthused and enthusiastic about how they can participate in their city. And again, we're bringing the real estate perspective to this. What does real estate have to do with what we want to do? Next, and I always, when I'm doing these presentations, ask people, how many of you walked to work today? And do you walk to work? What about take the train? Well, the reality is most people drive. They drive to work. And they drive to work because our cities have been planned around the automobile for a very, very long time. And so now we have to think about, what are we really going to do to realize that walkability and transit is really important? I think those of you who were with us in Hawaii at APRIC will see what we were able to do in 2015, the APRIC conference, and that really focused on TOD, which is transit-oriented development. We were able to contribute some expertise from Singapore, from Japan, to help the city of Honolulu as they're working on their plan to introduce light rail to the city of Honolulu, which there was no light rail in Honolulu. If you've been to Honolulu, you know the traffic is really, really incredibly bad, on certain hours. Certainly, we had in the Asia Pacific region, Jakarta, Manila, many cities have real huge traffic problems. And so that really means, again, a vision of urban planning that includes public transit and development around public transit. If you go to the Fiat USA site, again, we have the documents and the presentations for the light rail, but this is the idea of the various stops that will be along the train, bringing people around. So that the millennial, that there has been a huge shift. I think in the U.S. there was this whole flight to the suburbs in the 70s and 80s, and now it's reversing. Millennials want to live, work, and play in the same space. They don't want to spend a lot of time commuting and going there. So how do we, again, integrate a larger perspective of transportation and transportation hubs? There is one study, again, giving you information from Chicago, but we have the train, we call it the L, but from our public train transit, they did a study, and within 1 mile of a train stop, the residential values after the recession from 2008 recovered. Within a 3-year period of time, they had completely recovered their value. The further out you get from the train stop, some of those residential areas have not yet recovered their value. So there is value. This is one of those things that it's looking at the bottom line, that the value is going more and more and more toward being accessible through public transportation. And I think everybody is aware, we keep talking about Uber and the idea of what's going on, but public transportation, walkability, transit friendly, that is really, really crucial. Another aspect here, number 9, safe, healthy, and happy. And I think this is something that is very interesting to us because I think a lot of times we don't realize what aspect real estate has to play in safe, healthy, and happy communities. I think, once you stop and think about it, absolutely, you have to realize that safe, healthy, and happy is a part of the real estate development. And how do we make our communities safe, healthy, and happy? I wanted to share with you one of the my New Year's resolutions has been to read a lot more books. I think we get so distracted, and so I'm talking about a physical hard copy book sitting on my sofa, reading a book. And this is a book I recommend, particularly for folks from the U.S. It's called Evicted. And you see here the website, without a home, everything else falls apart. And so that idea of home ownership, and the National Association of Realtors really talks about how critical it is, and the idea of home ownership and a place to live. But if you don't have a home, or if you're kicked out of your home on a regular basis, what happens is the fabric of that community, particularly where places are high eviction rates, starts to fall apart. Crime rates go up, health starts to deteriorate. So the idea of real estate and the idea of looking at what we are doing as far as contributing is what we're doing contributing to the safety and health of our communities, or are we just moving ahead without consideration of those issues? And so it was very interesting. I don't know, hopefully looking back, we'll go back here just so you can see. If you look down here, you can see the videos. So there's the complete video, and they're also on the international site, which I'll show you later. But the complete videos of our actually more than 3-hour presentations in Quito are here. And it was interesting, one of the ladies that was presenting was talking about actually smells. A lot of times we talk about asbestos or all sorts of other health concerns, but she was talking about just the idea of toxic fumes, and whether that's in carpets or cleaning materials or those kinds of things. So there are lots of aspects. Again, not our primary directive, but certainly a part of what we have in our communities and development. And then number 10, learning and innovating. And I think, as I mentioned before, we tend to be pretty conservative as an industry. We do the things the way that we have always done them. That's kind of a developer model. I built this building, I did it this way, I financed it this way, I'm going to do it that way and keep doing it. And so, but the 10th and all hands, all fingers is we have to continually be learning and innovating. One of the projects here that's in the book is New Orleans, and this was a Berlin company, a Graft in Berlin, submitted this project for the book, and this was what they did in New Orleans after the floods. And so you can see in the book, go to there, you see the top picture is what happened, what it looked like after the floods. A lot of the homes, were destroyed with the water. You see the plan, and then in the lower left, you see the modular homes which were designed by Graft and moved into the 9th Ward in New Orleans. So there were modular homes. You see they're lifted up off the ground, so if for whatever reason, if there's another flood, they won't be taken away. These are, again, constructed off-site, so it's a modular home constructed off-site and then brought to in pieces and assembled on the site. Another innovative technique, I think people are familiar with this, but these are Astra Plus, which is building kits. So it's a structural insulated panels, and they're able to build a house through these structured insulated panels or a commercial building where the panels come together and they fit together like a kit. So they're able to build up to 3,000 homes a year using this idea. And what they really do is they're patenting this for any country in the world. So you can get the patent and start a factory in your country that builds these panels. And then you sell these panels to groups that can then assemble them to make homes affordable, easy to put together. I know we talked about and looked at shipping containers. I think some of you are aware that there are all these shipping containers that are just sitting around empty, doing nothing. And so there are some innovative solutions to taking those shipping containers and putting those together to create a home. They're very solid, they're very secure, so you put 6 of them together, drill out open the walls, and you create a home. So there are innovative ways in building materials and ways to move forward that are very, very exciting. Another innovative thing, and this is wrapping up, one of the things that I want to show you and talk about is, and we will be introducing this, we are currently continuing our work with the UN, and this is the FIABSE Cloud Platform for Sustainable Urban Development Assessment. And so to review what I've been talking about all along is sustainability includes 4 elements: economic sustainability, political sustainability, ecological sustainability, and cultural sustainability. So the idea is all of these things work together. And so FIABSE has we introduced this in Quito. We will be talking about this in MIPIM at the booth. We're also talking with the United Nations. The United Nations, BIM, I think if people are familiar with BIM, which is Building Information Management, the idea of all of the information from the architect's plan to the building to the operational cost of that building, gathering BIM, Building Information Management. Now there's CIS, which is City Information Systems. What about a city? So we are in the process of negotiating with the UN to merge our tool with the UN tool so that we have an online tool that is usable for all of the cities. So I'm here talking about finally the Urban Lab. And so going forward, Urban Lab is you're going to be hearing a lot more about this. I encourage everyone on the webinar to contact us, to go out to your communities, go out to your universities. Who's being innovative? Who's coming up with great ideas to make our cities sustainable, particularly in the affordable and workforce housing? This is on fiabse.org. Again, when you go to the website, you will see here on the affordable housing. So if you click on affordable housing, you will see 2 things. The city we need is affordable, which is the same information that we had on the USA site. You can download the book, you can watch the videos, and then the other aspect of our affordable housing campaign is the Urban Lab. And this we're going to be building out more over the next few weeks and months as we move toward MIPIM. Here you see, and this is a direct link to the platform, and this is the cloud platform that we have developed to assess cities. We're looking for chapters to develop their own assessment of their cities, looking at the idea of how this works. So please look at this. You'll see we're in the testing phase, and it shows you how this was Rome and Milan. So you show the graphic that you get once you complete the assessment on the city. So that's the idea of really, Malcolm Baldrige, if you're familiar, you can't improve anything if you can't measure it. So this is the Urban Lab. We have presentations from Panama here, and this will be built out, so be sure to check this frequently. You will see here from our, this is Jean-Claude, a really great video talking about the UN habitat and their preparations. And then here, this was the book on our Urban Thinkers campus, which we did in Dubai. So lots of very, very exciting things that are going on. That's my presentation now. John, if you're back on, see
Yes.
if anybody has any questions.
Okay,
We can go
great.
from there.
Thank you, Bill. And I am going to open this up if we have any questions. It's interesting when you were talking, I was in for the last part, and I apologize. I'm at our Missouri Realtor meetings and had a couple of committees I had to speak at. But how you were talking about the value, the closer it is to public transportation, and I can see where that would be an important factor, especially for a city where there's a lot of people and it's tough to find parking. And so I don't see any questions coming through. Anyone have a
Well,
question?
that's a bit, and the other thing I think that I will talk about in that situation is that kind of sounds like it might be true, but the reality is we need the data to show that that's really true.
Right.
So that that's really I think where we're missing right now is a lot of this stuff sounds logical, but we need data to back it up.
Right.
And I'm actually going back to my book reading. I am now reading Thomas Friedman. I don't know if everybody is familiar with The World is Flat, which was one of his kind of most famous books when he came out. But his new book is called Thank You for Being Late. And it's really about the idea of technology and data has improved so quickly and so fast that our ability to adapt is way behind.
Right.
So on the data side, if you talk about Moore's law, I don't know, I'm kind of deep into this technological thing but the cost of the computer chip and its capacity to process data increases exponentially every 2 years. And so the amount of data that's out there, and I'm reminded, I don't know if those on the call, the webinar, remember Luxembourg and Jeremy Rifkin talking about how the real estate industry is so far behind in, not only collecting data, but sharing that data and big data. And so that's another big issue.
Right.
I know
Exactly.
to give a shout out and a plug for Andorra and the World Congress. Smart cities, smart buildings is one of the theme, and I think that idea of how we make a better use of data.
Yes. Danielle, I see you're on the call. Would you like to say a few words? Or anyone else, if you want to raise your hand, we'd love to, if you have a question for Bill. Otherwise, Bill, thank you so much. We appreciate your time, and thanks to everyone. I did record the webinar, so we will put it on the FIOPSI website. And thanks, Bill. It's very good, and I appreciate your participation.
Absolutely, and yeah, like I said, just for those on the call, we'll be at MIPIM. We'll be talking about it at the MIPIM in Cannes. That'll be the 14th through the 17th of March, and then the next event after that for everyone will be the World Congress in May. We also will be at the UN. The UN luncheon, our biannual UN luncheon, will be April 4 in New York. So lots of opportunities to get together.
Alrighty. Thanks, Bill. Have a great day. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. All right.
Bye.